social media and new media. It's Space Media 2.0. What we're talking about is non-traditional forms of media and social networking. And our panelists up here, they represent a very wide array of talent. We've got an Emmy Award-winning journalist. We've got somebody who currently runs a major online newspaper in Essex area. People that do come from the traditional form of journalism and have a lot of experience in it, but also have made that smooth transition into this new age world. We've got some what I like to call kind of garage journalists or the homegrown journalists and people that have kind of taken it upon themselves to build a brand and build a media source on their own, using the existing technology and what you can actually do with this and how far you can get out. And then we've got someone who represents the for-profit sector. So if you're out there and you want to learn how to make more money or to generate new business or to just get your brand out there on a for-profit level, we've got someone that can represent that, and we've got someone that represents the nonprofit world and the advocacy world that can talk about some of the pitfalls and some of the benefits that come from using new media and social networking to enhance your membership and your effect on the world. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I think that's the best way to do it. So, Will, do you want to start off? What's that? Yeah. I think we should stay at the table. Let's stay relaxed. If anybody has a question, shout it out. Throughout this, what we're going to do is I'm going to have them introduce themselves. I've got a couple of questions here I want to ask just to frame our conversation, and then I want to keep it as light and as open as possible so that we can really have a dialogue between you and the audience. The panelists can have a dialogue, and even I can bug them with some of my questions as well. So, Will Pomerantz of X Prize Foundation.
Thank you. Well, as Ian just said, my name is Will Pomerantz. I'm the Senior Director for Space Prizes at the X Prize Foundation.
The battery's making it.
Do you need me to go to the mic then?
You mind?
I don't mind. All right, we're just going to roll with it here. We're flying along. Okay, I'll try that again. Hi, everybody. My name's Will Pomerantz. I'm the Senior Director for Space Prizes at the X Prize Foundation. I am not a professional journalist by any means. I'm relatively new to this new media thing, but I suppose everyone is. That's why it's new media. I have the distinct honor and privilege of running the Google Lunar X Prize, the $30 million prize competition. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume most of you are familiar with. It's $30 million in prizes for privately funded teams that can land robots on the surface of the moon and explore the lunar surface, send back digital pictures. As you can probably imagine, with Google as our title sponsor and tight partner on that program, they are extremely interested in us using social media, all the new media technologies, not only to promote the competition, to promote their role and to promote the teams, but also just to use it to increase the power of this prize to really hook in and inspire a new generation. The folks who weren't around to see Apollo, who weren't around to see Mercury and Gemini and get inspired in the way that for maybe some of us in this room or some of our parents got inspired. So I have been learning about new media both for my own job. Also, we have actually made it a hard-written requirement of this prize, unique among any prize we've ever done. It is a requirement that our teams do a certain amount of blogging, do a certain amount of pushing video out through YouTube and other social media. So I've had to both be involved in the process as we educate our teams on how to do that, but why to do that. So I become a blogger myself and Twitter and Facebook user. I blog at the Launchpad, which is the X Prize Foundation's main space blog, also recently, occasionally for the Huffington Post. But I'm relatively new to this. I've been sort of put in the trial by fire. I'm really enjoying it, become a true believer, and I look forward to learning from all my fellow panelists today. Thanks.
George Challenger.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here today. I'm a replacement for Ron Perlman, who could not be here. My career is very diverse. I worked for MSNBC in 1997, which was really the start of fully converged journalism, bringing together a lot of diverse sources. You had radio, you had newspaper, you had magazines, you had everybody in the same room trying to produce content. And this was the online world. MSNBC.com launched in the late 90s, and we were launching completely new products. It was very interesting. From there, I went to AOL, which became AOL Time Warner, which is now Time Warner. And there, again, we were working on converging media, bringing all these things together. From Time Warner, I went to the X Prize Foundation, worked with Will on the 2006 X Prize Cup. From the X Prize Cup, I thought space was pretty challenging, so I decided to do a documentary on sharks. And I did a documentary on sharks, and then I went back to produce an air show at the Kennedy Space Center in 2007 called World Space Expo. Currently, I'm a professor at the University of Missouri School of Journalism. And what we are really working to do there now with the next generation of journalists is teach them how to make best use of all technologies. Because it's not just photojournalism anymore, it's not just magazines, it's not just newspapers, it's not just online, it's a combination of everything. And social networking, viral marketing, these things are critical to getting information out there.
Hi, my name's Jeff Faust. My day job is working as a analyst for Futron Corporation, which is an aerospace and telecommunications consulting company based in the DC area. The reason why I'm on this panel, though, is for some of the websites that I produce outside of work. One of them is called the Space Review. That's a weekly online publication with essays and commentary on various space-related issues. I also run a space news website called spacetoday.net that aggregates the space news from all around the web. I run a blog called spacepolitics.com, which talks about various policy issues, the goings-on within the Beltway, and also a personal spaceflight blog, which talks about space tourism-related topics. And I'll probably leave it at that so we can get through the rest of the panel and on to the more interesting discussion.
My name is Ben Higginbotham. Actually, I'm married to this one right over here, Carrie Ann Higginbotham. We run Spacevidcast.com. We are definitely a garage-based media outlet. You can kind of tell by looking at us. We've got like suit, 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 and then, whatever, it's suit. So, yeah, we're, no, we're definitely, we just, whatever we find in our basement or in our garage, we're like, can we put this to use? And it's been going pretty good. We do online, live, high-definition video of space launches and trying to build a community of people that are not the normal space geek. They're the 50% of Americans who like space travel, who are like, yeah, that's awesome, but aren't necessarily wouldn't come to an ISDC. They maybe would watch a shuttle launch, but maybe not. So we're trying to get them involved and turn them not only into the space geek, but also flip them all the way to evangelist if we can.
Yeah, what he said.
My name is Michael Mealing. I'm the Vice President for Business Development for Mast and Space Systems. We're a launch company building vertical takeoff, vertical landing, suborbital launch vehicles. We're a competitor in the Lunar Lander Challenge. And if I could get a network that would work, we actually did a flight test out of Mojave about 45 minutes ago, did a 30-second flight with about 4 translations that's currently being uploaded to YouTube. So I may not be able to display it here, but we do that with every single flight test that we do. We blog, everybody in the company Twitters, so we just do it we can't think of any way other than that to do it, so we've been doing social media for quite a while.
Great, thanks, guys. Let's start at the very top, and let's start down there with Michael again so we can come back down this way. How would you define social media? How would you define new media, specifically, and in layman's terms, really bring it to the basics?
New media, I would say they have 2 slightly different definitions. New media ends up being using things other than television and cable, the traditional ways, getting it out over networks and to cell phones and everything else. But social media is something that's come about as the viewers and the consumers of what we're spewing at them have decided to participate. And you end up with the connections between the people that are consuming what you have to say, and they're starting to have things to say about it themselves. So it's, instead of, early in the internet, when I was involved in it heavily, you always heard about, it's going to be a conversation. Well, that took a while to actually get a new generation of people who are expecting that conversation to happen. So from our point of view, social media it's all those tools, Facebook and everything else, but it's the fact that people who are paying attention to what we are doing have good and nice things to say themselves that help us. So it's a conversation.
Or bad things.
Or bad things.
And then you can address them immediately.
Nobody
says bad things about me.
Well, no, not about you. I was talking about us. I'm sorry. Same question?
Oh, yeah, I want to hear everybody's answer.
What is social media? I don't know if I have a good answer for that, which is funny because I wrote the question.
How about new media
New media?
or space media 2.0?
Space Media 2.0, I guess I sort of look at it a lot like Michael said, and I'm not going to keep repeating all of that other fun stuff, but it's not, in my mind, the younger generation, or kind of like Ben was saying, our particular audience, Spacevidcast audience specifically, isn't going to necessarily seek out a newspaper article, a magazine article, or even a conference. You know, even this is a little bit old school if you want to look at it that way. But if they can get it to their cell phone, if they can get it online, if they can get it, we're streaming it right now. They can get it live. Hi, everybody. Or we're also archiving it so they can get it on demand because, some people are still at work right now and they can't tune in. And all of those things, to get it in your iPod so when you're driving to work, you can still get the information that you're looking for because, you can't read while you're in the car. At least you shouldn't, for the most part. So I guess that's my differentiation between the old media. And not that it's old media. It's obviously tried and true. Don't get me wrong. But there's a certain generation that isn't... because they grew up in the sort of internet generation, that's where they go first.
What she said, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, building upon that, I think just short and sweet, new media, space new media 2.0, whatever you want to call it, is pretty much, it's not the tool itself, it's not the Twitter, it's not the Facebook. Those are just the tools that make it up. It's the community, it's the interaction with everyone, and what's vitally different between new media and old media is that new media is on the viewer's terms. It's on the community's terms, not on my terms. So it's what they want, not what I want.
Well, if we're going to talk about space media 2.0, we probably should first define space media 1.0 first, or space media, some version number in between. Before the internet became so ubiquitous, a lot of people relied on a very handful of publications like Aviation Week, like Space News, other trade publications for space news, or else clung to a short segment that might show up on the evening news or on page A17 of the local newspaper or half a page in a news magazine. What Space Media 2.0 has really allowed the floodgates to open because the barriers to at least making the information available have dropped dramatically. I mean, anyone can create now a website, a blog, a discussion forum, whatever the case may be, to disseminate information. The challenge now with Space Media 2.0, or perhaps even 2.1, 2.5, or whatever the next version number is going to be, is taking that, changing that from accessing information to being able to doing something with that information. There's a flood of information that comes now from official sources. NASA is doing a lot of work online. If you saw George Whiteside's presentation this morning on this, obviously a lot of companies are doing this, a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses distributing information, as well as both traditional and quote-unquote new media companies providing information online. The real challenge now for Space Media 2.0 or 2.x is going to be filtering, curating, harnessing this information so that you're able to find the most important information and be able to take and be able to turn that into actionable information from an advocacy standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a technical standpoint, as the case may be. And I think that's the next big challenge now for space media, and I think that's where social media ties in, because you're now able to harness not just a single expert, but a whole community of experts to help identify and sort and assess information. And being able to use those tools is going to be extremely useful in turning this fire hose information that's increasingly available and directing it in the right direction.
The answer to, I'll try to tweet the answer to the first one. traditional media is what's important to you, social media is what's important to me. And if you look at it that way, you understand the way media is going. When it comes to let's talk about Space 1.0. We saw it at MSNBC in the late 90s with Pathfinder. When Pathfinder sent back the first photographs from Mars, we were amazed at the traffic that those images generated. And it was for the first time, this media was what people wanted. And they could dive into it, they could look at it. In 2004, with the winning X Prize flights, we spent several weeks in Mojave putting together a multi-level viewer. And we broke all kinds of records at AOL because, again, we were giving it to the user. We were saying, okay, here's 7 angles on Spaceship One and White Knight. You be the judge. You watch this flight as you want to see it.
I disagree with everyone. No. I've always wanted to say that. No, of course, I agree with everything everyone said. Just to add a few things that I've learned, again, sort of through trial and error. I think in the new media world, whether it's space or anything else, consumers are demanding of a few things. One, they demand that content is fresh and frequent. I think everyone on the panel would probably agree nothing will kill a blog or a video podcast faster than posting once and not posting again for 2 weeks. And nothing will kill it more than... No, you guys are doing something every day. You guys are putting some kind of content out there every hour of every day. Between all of your users, you guys, the Spacevidcast tag on Twitter or all your different things are constantly going. And I think that's true for basically everyone up here on the panel. But at the same time, you know, to differentiate Media 2.0 from 1.0 or the other version numbers, they also don't expect the journalist or the citizen journalist or the iReporter or whatever to have gone through 40 different drafts and iterations to make sure every comma is in the right place. They would much rather have the gist of the information now and have the journalist or the iReporter have the appropriate respect for the job and for the audience to not be afraid to go back and amend the record and say, I got this wrong. My sources were incorrect. I misstated this, and I'm leaving it up here so you can read what I wrote. But I've got the chutzpah to go out there and correct it. So I think that those things really do differentiate. Another one that I think Media 1.0 everyone likes to claim that they are fair and balanced and that they insert no bias. And I think most of us don't really believe that. In Media 2.0, I think people don't mind the bias as much because we wear it on our sleeves. You guys know every time I blog, I'm going to write about prizes. It's what I do. It's why I'm blogging. It's my job. And I don't try and pretend I'm not going to do it, and I think that is showing a certain level of respect for the audience, and hopefully people seem to get that. They know certain people have a certain tone and are always going to be talking about the same thing and not pretending to equally show two sides of a story that may or may not be equal.
Keep the mic. Specifically, I mean, I kind of want to frame this question. You know, the question is, why should the space industry, why should the people in our audience care about what you're talking about? What do they need? You know, why do they need to know what you guys know? And I want to qualify that in that, you know, the space industry is 80% military, which doesn't use the media and could care less because, you know, most of that stuff is behind closed doors and we'll never know about it. The other 20% is, you know, majority of it's NASA, and then there's this tiny little section which is, you know, very well represented at this conference. And what I'm speaking about is specifically that group. You know, you can even speak for the civil sector because hopefully you're all taxpayers. But that's your space program, that's your civil space program. But then also there's, you know, some of you are involved in private enterprise, and well, specifically someone's got a very important vested interest in a private space company. But why do they need to care? Why do they need to know what you guys know, and quickly?
It's a good
Not
question.
quickly on your answer, but they need to know it quickly.
Okay. I was going to try and talk really fast.
No, this is a 90-minute panel. Take your time.
You know, I'll kind of answer that from the perspective of a consumer, because I certainly was a consumer of basically everyone up here well before I was writing or producing video of my own or anything like that. For me, because of some of the things that we all just discussed about Space Media 2.0, because it's out there, warts and all, because it's fresh, it's far more emotionally compelling to me. I feel personally engaged. I get to know, there are a lot of people in this audience who I have met in person maybe once before, who I know what they did last weekend, and I know what they're working on in their project, and I can point them to resources that will be helpful to them, help them achieve success and feel like I've shared in that success. And I think that it really does. It's that personal connection, it's me being involved that makes it me not passively reading a press release. It's me engaging in a program that I have selected and I've gotten to know, and they can fire hose me with information, and hopefully the savvy consumers have gotten good at cherry picking out the pieces of data that they want and filtering out the rest.
New media and social media require you to cut to the chase instantaneously. You can't water things down. You must make your point very quickly. What we found in the new products we're creating, what we found is people tend to click out in less than 10 seconds if they're watching some kind of streaming media. That means you have 10 seconds to convert your audience and to get them engaged. We have this graph, and it kind of looks like a long tail if you're familiar with that, but the people that are engaged in your product for over 5 minutes is a very small part of the audience. Now, hopefully these are the people that are very interested in what you have to say, but you can't, what we used to say in journalism, you can't bury the lead. It's now more important than ever that you do not bury the lead. You must make your point as soon as possible to keep your audience engaged. And when we filter stories, and we're constantly filtering through news, and a lot of world news and a lot of global news, and for us, we really have to wordsmith, and we really have to just cut to the chase. And one other thing I'll say, the great thing about new media as well, is allows, and same with rocket science, if your technology is good and new technology is, iterations. Good media is about the ability to do a large amount of iterations of a product and get until you get the one you want. You can rapidly prototype what your content is to keep people engaged. And the other great thing about new media, social media, is you get instantaneous feedback, what people are watching and what people are consuming, and that's very, very important to look at the analytics.
I'll answer this maybe by challenging a little bit of what the basis of Ian's question, and that is, it's the military's also, when it comes to military space issues, is increasingly focused on new media and social media in terms of getting the word out. And there's a fairly recent example. Some of you might remember in the news last week, there were news reports that the GPS constellation of navigation satellites was in jeopardy. That the satellites were going to start failing, and there were going to start to be gaps in coverage, and all your GPS receivers were stop working, and all sorts of horror stories like that. All based off of a report by the Government Accountability Office that said that there's such and such percentage based on the lifetimes of the satellites and projecting them out and the plans for launch and replacements, that there might be a gap in coverage. And one of the ways that the Air Force responded to this is that the Air Force Space Command uses Twitter. They have a Twitter account, and they actually accepted questions and answered questions via Twitter over the course of one afternoon last week. Just random people saying, hey, what do I have to worry about here? Is my GPS receiver going to stop working? And they were giving their response that, no, there's nothing really to worry about. The constellation is very robust. That the new systems are on their way, and so on and so forth. Now, you can, say, legitimately challenge, are they just spinning here or so on? But they recognized that there was a need, that there was a problem that they had to address, and that they needed to address it quickly and to reach out to the individuals, not just working through the regular mainstream or even new media, that they reached out directly through social media to address this issue. So it's important not just for the commercial space community, the civil space community, the military space community. They're all increasingly realizing that people are using these social media platforms, and that if they want to reach out and make sure that their message is well received, they're going to have to use these and use these in the ways, not just broadcasting press releases or the equivalent thereof, but use them in the ways that the general public is using them.
I hope I never get a tweet from @NORAD that says, uh-oh. I'm just going to run at that point. I actually had no idea they were on Twitter. That's very cool. I'm just, delving into my idealistic brain for a moment. I realize that the military is a good chunk of space travel, but I don't think it's going to be like that forever. I think that once mere mortals are able to go into space, me, or you or anyone else, the playing field is going to change radically. At which point, I think it might become almost like an airline, a little bit different, but it's going to become substantially larger with the consumer travel into space. And we're going to see a lot of money and marketing dollars that go into that. And if you aren't in social media, which is a marketing tool as well, you're going to be behind. And that goes for companies like SpaceX and all of the Google Lunar X Prize teams and the X Prize Foundation itself, and everyone, even the NASA's. And actually, quite frankly, NASA does a great job of the social media stuff, I think. They're on Twitter and they're doing all this stuff, and they're able to communicate and stay in touch with everyone on whomever's terms at that point. And it helps everyone feel more real. And that's why you want to do it, because the playing field will change, and you can watch it in real time. You can be part of it in real time, and you don't have to then play catch up with everyone else when that point in time comes where military isn't the 80% anymore, and it's everyone here who's making it happen.
The reason the two of us are on this panel is because we actually have different opinions. So I will say, well, not that it's a different opinion per se, but because your customer cares. They used to say, if you build it, they will come. Well, it's to the point where they're there. They're looking for you. You don't have to really build it. They've kind of built it on their own for the most part. They're just looking for you to respond to them. They're looking for you to, kind of like Ben was saying, to put a face to that name. I think sometimes different corporations, especially when you have a really nice, long-sounding name, suddenly you get this image of like a great big cement building. And that's not who you are. That's not who any of you are, even if you are that big, huge corporation. There are people who work inside that big, huge corporation that are just as funny, just as interesting, just as, stupid, just as clumsy as your customers are. Does that make sense? And so they want to know that. They want to know that you are human, and it's good for you to know that there are humans out there listening to you.
Going back to the question of reminding myself what the original question was, which was why should you guys care? It took me a kind of a second to think about that, because as a company and everyone in the company, we never really thought of it as something that we needed to do. We just thought of it as it was fun, and that's just the most fun we could have doing it. So it was semi-selfish. But at the same time, the company has been blogging since we were founded in 2004. And we had our first successful tethered hover flight about 2 weeks ago. On a Friday afternoon. I actually got the press release out about that on Tuesday morning. The tweets that we sent out seconds after the successful flight from the actual test area with people's iPhones clicking the vehicle and everything, and the YouTube video we posted that day, the number of hits that we actually ended up receiving on our website for the week following that, Clark Lindsay's Hobby Space outranked Aviation Week and every other traditional aviation-related outlet for one. And that was putting out a press release through PR Newswire and everything else, and still Clark sent me more links and more traffic than anything else, many times over. So it's the way people are finding out things. It's also just fun for both sides. Everybody in the company is now part of our PR process. But it's not a PR process. The guys were excited. They had cell phones, and they did what people are excited and have cell phones do. They told other people about it. And but that does something very valuable for me as a business, is it personalizes the relationship with the people that are interested in my company. We're not just some nameless company that puts out press releases. We're people that they know, people that they care about, and they care about our success. And they care that we're expecting that to translate, that will translate into a customer that will have an ongoing relationship where we give them something that they find valuable. So it's all part of the process.
I want to recognize the gentleman along the wall. He has a question.
I I guess the last question was why should we all care about kind of social networking, 2.0 stuff? I kind of want to get past that in the sense that all of us kind of already care. I mean, really, we're the group that you guys are giving us now more information, allowing us to interact, which is fantastic for us. And you're going to probably build sort of a user base of people who are interested in space and promoting space in that sense, because now they have access to information that they didn't already have access to. But I was wondering, how would you think about utilizing sort of some of these things like Twitter and Facebook and all of these social networking tools to sort of build more curiosity with people that aren't already interested, that aren't already looking for that information?
That was actually one of the points that I was going to try and make. And one of the interesting things about Facebook, depending on how Facebook decides to do your status stream at any given moment and what shows up where, you get a really interesting cross-pollination. My social network, it has, I've started my career a couple times, so I have a lot of internet people from early on. I got family, I've got friends that have absolutely no relationship with space whatsoever. I've connected Twitter up to Facebook, so I tweeted my 5,000th tweet the other day, so people on Facebook hate me. But I get people commenting on my space-related tweets that have never shown an interest in space before. And it's that cross-pollination that, as you're building your social, one of the aspects, the strong aspects of social media is the connections. Who's your friend? Are you a fan? Yes, my dog has a fan page on Facebook. So, she's on there. So it's that cross-pollination. It's the people that aren't already in this room who are following my tweets, who are now finding out that I actually may know something about social media, that are now going, wait, space people do social media? I had no idea. And because of that, they may actually end up looking at my followers on Twitter and find someone like Beth Beck out of NASA, who is their outreach manager, who tweets just about everything and actually responds and carries on a conversation, which is something that when I grew up with NASA was a black hole. Well, it wasn't. It was a quasar more than anything. Things came out of it. You were never able to send anything into it. If you did, it never came back out. But Beth and the people at NASA are solving that. So people that you're cross-pollinating with are now seeing a side of space and a side of NASA and a side of us and a side of all these other organizations that before now would have never been able to see that.
Anybody else want to respond?
Really quickly, it's a natural progression, and it's something that has to happen organically. So if you're looking for cross-pollination tomorrow, that's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing to sort of note. It's not like sending out something to Associated Press and then everybody suddenly has it, so then everybody knows about it. It's that cross-pollination. The bee takes time to get from one flower to the next flower to the next, and et cetera, and it's the exact same thing. But I will be a fan of your dog on Facebook now, because I didn't know she had a page, so there we go.
But you're right. It has to be genuine or it's spam.
Exactly.
Or it's just PR again, and people don't want that.
Spam.
Hey,
Yeah.
come on, take it easy. I gotta eat. I want to interject something quickly. I want to get on to this topic of what specific tools are out there, and I wish I had a whiteboard. I'm a big whiteboard person, and what I'd love to do is just kind of write down everything that they say over the next couple of minutes here, because I want to see if we can get a list together of all the different tools available to you in new media and social networking, and viral marketing as well. And I want you guys also to talk about what are the right tools for you. But really quickly, I want to interject. I walked. I don't know if some of you guys know this. I walked around and I opened these doors, and it's one of the things that I like to talk about a lot is open source and transparency. I'm also doing a little bit of a social experiment and a metaphor for what we're talking about here. When you look through the internet, you're usually flying by very quickly. It's almost like perusing the TV channels on your TV guide. You're just looking for something that sparks you, and then you stop for a second, and then you quickly, you see another banner ad, and you move around quickly. It's exactly what I'm trying to do here. We've got a lot of different tracks going on, and I wanted to open the doors because I've seen a couple people trickle in since I've done that. This is exactly what we're talking about here. We've created an environment here where we have a subject that we're all interested in, and like you were saying, there's all of us in this room, we do care about this topic. But the people walking by, they probably didn't see, they may have seen this on the schedule before, they may have even known it was here, but a couple of them walked in just because they walked by and they heard a word or two that sparked them. And just, I want to see how many people, like, just for my own enjoyment of doing a social experiment, I wanted to see how many people I could get to come in. Also to realize, to let you guys all know that what we're doing here, it is open source, it is transparency, and that's not something you should be afraid of. You shouldn't be afraid to express your ideas. It also, it makes you act with a certain level of social maturity that I think that new media requires at this point. So I hope you don't mind that I interject. And just one other point, I love what Michael said about this. I tell my clients all the time, and I learned this when I was doing XPRIZE. I have 4 websites that I love to go to that when I have people that come to me and they're like, I want to be on CNN. And I'm like, why? Nobody watches CNN. In fact, if you look at CNN's prime, they get 285,000 media impressions for a primetime shot. Of that 285,000, I guarantee you only 15%, maybe 20% are paying attention. The rest, they're on in offices or airports. Now, if you really want to get traction for your news, you can go to a series, and I know there's more, but I like 4 of them that I choose, and what I'll do is I'll put my news out on them first, and from those 4, I can get 1.5 million people that actually care about aviation and space. And all my clients are like, so wait a second, you're telling me that I want to be in these 4 websites and not on CNN? I'm like, CNN is a waste of time. It's a waste of your time. You're going to have to work it. You're going to have to pay somebody like me to get to somebody like an editor or producer. Then they're going to give me crap, and I'm going to have to deal with them and bribe them or figure it out. It's a rigmarole that honestly, if you can just build that relationship with a couple of website guys that you know, and you can do this by talking to them, then you're going to get a lot more pub from just the PR standpoint.
Can I interject there?
Yeah, please.
For people that are actually staying in the hotel, there was USA Today sitting outside your door. How many people just stepped over it and ignored it because you had already actually read the news before you left your room? Yeah. So, same thing, USA Today.
I was thinking about using it as a coaster for my coffee and when I got into the registration room, but now I'm picking it. But now let's talk about this. What tools do you guys even know about, even if you're not using them? And then and feel free to bounce the mic back and forth or just shout them out, because I want people that maybe are new to this or are here to learn and maybe want to hear some new places that they can go. Let's get a big list together, and then also talk about the ones that you use, the ones that you like, because I know Carrie Ann brought this up. It's not just about, you don't want to go out there and use all of them. You want to find the ones that are right for you, and this is what Carrie Ann was telling me. This is not me, but and that's what I want to focus on is having them give you input on the ones they really like.
Can I start?
You have the
question?
mic.
Start wherever you
Okay.
like.
You have the
How
mic.
many
You can
people
do
in the
whatever you
room-
want.
How many people in the room use Twitter? Okay, let me flip this around the other way. How many people in the room do not use Twitter? How many people in the room do not use Facebook?
How many don't know what Twitter is?
Okay, cool. Those are 2 of my biggest ones. I prefer Twitter for a lot of things because 140 characters makes you make your point very quickly. Blogging. Google just came out with something called Google Wave, which looks extremely fun.
What is Google Wave?
Google Wave.
Twitter's about it, and I haven't had a chance to check it out.
Do you remember JotSpot, the collaborative document editing software? It allows you to collaboratively edit a document. So you can be editing a document and have 10 other authors also editing the document at the same time. And you see all their changes all happening on the screen at the same time. But it's much more beyond that because they've expanded it to allow you to link everything into, so the document is no longer a document. It is this meta thing of tweets and edits and changes and versions and video and everything else. It's a funnel. It takes all these kind of things and links them into a semi-serialized, serial document kind of format, but it doesn't have to be that way. But it's all collaborative. You can change it on the fly with whoever you want to invite to it. I plan on using it for our launch manual for our customers, to let our customers embellish my manual with things that they find, things like that. So I haven't tried it yet, but I remember JotSpot, and it was way cool, and that's on my short list. So.
Similar to Wikipedia, but on a
Real-time, immediate basis. The way it shows up is there are cursors, multiple cursors in your document at the same time, and you're seeing text being typed at the same time you're typing text.
Your computer's possessed.
Yes, it is.
in terms of the kind of tools that are out there and the number of tools that are out there, it's ridiculous. If you get a chance, go to knowem.com, KNOWEM.com. Yeah, what it does, the reason I'm shoving you there is what it is meant to do is for you to be able to check your username. So I go by Carrie Ann, that's my first name, that's what I've chose, whatever. So I can type it in there and see, you know, which of all of the thousands of social media websites, this says it checks 120 of the popular ones, okay, for, you know, my name to see where I supposedly am. Now, granted, because I'm using my first name, there are going to be other Carrie Anns out there who are on, you know, Skidoo and LinkedIn and Eventful and Etsy and, you know, that kind of stuff, who aren't me. But for a business or for a corporation, you know, if you do Spacevidcast, I know that every single one of those is me. And if you want to go ahead and, like, click on it and just sign yourself up so that nobody else can grab your name and start, you know, saying crap about you, that's cool too. But it's just, it's a really good visual representation of 120 popular social websites.
And actually, I would recommend doing that because you don't want someone else stealing your brand and using it against you. So definitely go and register. Even if you're not going to use it, just register your brand somewhere and stick to that brand. That's just my 2 cents. What was the question? What sites do we use? What tools do we use?
No, well, one is what sites are out there. Let's just see if we can get a master
What sites
list
are out
between
there?
everybody in this
But
room
there's-
after you guys talk as well. But then, what do you like the most?
Which one, maybe which
What are the
one?
most effective for you?
Well, I mean, I think the list is probably going to be the same for a lot of us. It's going to be Twitter, Facebook. I think MySpace is falling off. You can do it, but I just think it's going away. I don't recommend doing
We're
it.
talking about new media too, though, and viral marketing.
Well, then, if you're talking if you're doing it for are you trying to get links in yourself, or are you just trying to?
This is
I'm just
up
gonna
to-
start
it's
throwing
up to
out-
you to answer the
All
question
right,
how you
fine. So,
think.
we obviously use Ustream as well for live video and live chat and interaction with everyone, and actually, we're based around it. So, Ustream, Mogulus, I would stay away from Justin TV personally because they've had some bad press. But just those real-time video sites and do real-time live interactive video with your community. Very powerful, very, very powerful, two-way television almost. And, any one of those sites are good tools. And then, of course, Twitter, and, I think that's where we spend most of our time.
In terms of blogging software, there are a couple choices you have. One is you can install blogging software in your own server. There are a couple of good choices out there. There's WordPress, wordpress.org, and then there's Movable Type that's used out there. If you want a hosted solution, that is just set something up, if you don't mind necessarily having, instead of having your domain name.com, having your name.theirdomainname.com, there's WordPress.com, which is WordPress in the hosted installation. TypePad and Blogspot are some of the commonly used ones out there, and you can get started on those in minutes, maybe seconds if you're a really fast typer, and immediately start to get to work blogging and producing content. And a lot of these, if you install it on your own server, a lot of these programs are sophisticated enough that they're basically, full-fledged content management systems that media companies used to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on for customized solutions for their own websites that you can twist and turn to fit whatever need that you have. In terms of sharing photos, I've used Flickr quite a bit. That's a very good site. It's a very popular site. Facebook actually is pretty good for sharing photos too, increasingly. As a case in point, last month I went out to Eastern Maryland. There was someone who had built a 1/10 scale model of a Saturn V and launched it. And it was, 90-minute drive from where I live. So I went out there, I took a bunch of pictures, came back home, and I uploaded them as a test to both Flickr and Facebook, and actually got a lot more comments from Facebook than I did from Flickr, maybe because I've spent more time cultivating the community of friends and such on Facebook than I have on Flickr. But it's interesting that Facebook's becoming a fairly powerful photo sharing site as well.
Has everyone seen that video, by the way, of the Saturn V, the model rocket? Go to youtube.com, search for Saturn V model rocket. It's amazingly awesome.
One of the trends we've been tracking over the last few weeks is the next generation of search engines. What happens to Google? Does it keep its dominance? What about Wolfram Alpha? What about Microsoft? So the reason why I think search is so important right now is if you have 120 different choices for social networking, how do you get to the best ones? How do you get it? So the key is the ability to search and research and do it effectively. One of the things I do on any story I'm covering, and the GPS was a good example, because the first thing when I saw this report on Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN, I was like, okay, this is an exaggeration. What is the GAO saying? So I went online and I downloaded the PDF, and it took me like 3 minutes to kind of look through it and see, okay, well, this is more of a military effect for precision, but people with a GPS in the family van is not going to be affected. So the key thing is the ability to search and use the next generation of search engines is going to be what's really most important. And if you're tracking a story, you're reporting a story, or you're getting information out there, try to get to the source. Try to get to the source. Don't stop a few levels up from where did it originate from? That is critical now to find the source in this next stage of journalism, because as things get removed, you may not really be able to get to the truth. But then again, things are so transparent now. If you can dig and you can search, you're going to find exactly what you're looking for, and it's the best tool I think that is important to have.
My favorite tool. Does the Spacevidcast chat room count? No. All right, fantastic. Just to chime in with some other ones, I agree with everything that's been mentioned. I think equally important as the blogs and Twitter and Facebook and all those kind of things. I suspect location-based social networking tools are probably the future, whether that's Google Latitude or Foursquare or Brightkite or any of those. As we all get more and more powerful cell phones, people are going to be doing that, and they already are with Yelp and Localin and those kind of things.
One of the things I love to do with Twitter, or actually Twinkle has the ability to, it tags a tweet with your location. So I set my span to look for within 1 mile radius wherever I'm at. So I do this little bit of digital archaeology where I can go to some place and I can see who has been there within the past 6 months, what they had to say. It's really fun to do in airports because you just hear everybody's travel woes when they got screwed in the airport. So for 6 months, if somebody comes here and looks at local tweets, they're going to find all of us tweeting to each other because we were here for a conference. And it's this little bit of digital archaeology. You just dig back in time and you find this stuff laying around.
That's absolutely right. And I think that is just going to become more and more important as we all start having GPS-enabled devices on our person at all times. Kind of riffing on the same thing, Google Maps, or Google Earth rather, and the whole community, the geocaching community, something that confounds me and surprises me every time I look at it. In like the history of the XPRIZE website, one of the biggest traffic drivers ever was something that we did, some 3D mapping KML layer that we did at, I think it was the 05 or 06 XPRIZE Cup. We had the Google folks come out and they did all this really high resolution. You could sort of view everything, all the structures that were set up for the cup. And we still have people, huge numbers of people coming and downloading that. That's a whole untapped community.
Will, can you define geocaching?
Geocaching is it's hide and go seek, or it's treasure hunting using GPS coordinates. So I go online, I find that someone has hidden or buried or something like that, a box at a certain location. I have to kind of traipse out in the woods or in some cool location. I have a bit of a hike. I find it, and I'm supposed to take something out of the box and put something back into the box. So it's an online social networking kind of game that involves both hiking and outdoor things with being savvy about using GPS. Other things. We recently installed Discuss, which is sort of a commenting tool that actually I've noticed a huge increase in both the volume and the quality of the comments on our blogs, because it makes it much easier to figure out where people are having conversations on a blog post versus where people are just passively reading a blog post, and it really drags the participation out of people. On a kind of similar level, I always feel like forums, or fora, I guess would be the proper Latin plural, should be a more effective tool, and I almost always find them to be really troublesome, so I'm waiting for someone to really solve that problem and come up with a fora that is forum that's self-regulating, and I don't have to spend all my time searching for trolls, but people can just have, yeah, maybe it's undoable, but maybe
It's driven by the community. The community of people have to enforce that. And that's like NASASpaceflight.com has a really great forum system because they have social rules that are enforced by people that are on there.
Yeah, but it can go too far too.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens on NSF where they just start wiping out good chunks of good content.
Right. It's a balance.
I'm going to add one, actually. Something that, I mean, obviously, any communication's got to be scalable. What we're talking about a lot is viral here, but also if you're looking for, once you've created your content, getting it out there, using Google Docs is great because you can share and edit using Google Docs. The other thing, you can publish as a web page for either everybody to see or just a list of people to see. So it's really about scalable sharing. Did you say TweetDeck? Anybody say TweetDeck? Update your Facebook and your Twitter at the same time, and it's also more of kind of a dashboard. I like that one. Skype is another one. I think one of the things we sometimes forget when we're in this digital age is really, and one of the things that's great about Spacevidcast is you really want to see the person's face. I mean, I think there's some probably made-up statistic that the majority of communication is nonverbal, and I think that when you're able to see somebody, it makes it a lot much more personal, especially in a business development setting. You probably don't want to email your business development pitches in, I'm thinking, so you can actually build a relationship. And then your iPhone apps, if you have iPhone. I think there's a lot of apps out there. Just search the App Store for whatever helps you out. We have a question.
I got a question. What is the danger in using the new media of just chatting and talking about it and not doing anything? Like space related, like just spending all your time wasting talking to other people and actually not going out and building hardware. Why? About to do it.
I've got engineers that work for me. Yes, we have that problem. But at the same time, one of the other problems we have is whenever we actually do something important, it's so much fun to go out and keep flying that nobody wants to go inside and write the blog entry that actually talks about what we're doing. So it's a balance. But yeah, we've had days where, Dave has had to tell everybody to get off Twitter and actually go to work. And so, yeah, it's a balance. But engineers are going to figure out some way to waste time when they're in the office. So, whether it's squishy toys on the desk or something, they'll find
Just make sure you're following all the people you work with so you know
Yes.
who's wasting the most time. It's
And
pretty
know-
easy to point to the culprit.
Well, and also knowing about all your employees' other Twitter accounts.
For instance, if one of your employees is on its 5,000th tweet, you may have to.
But that's my job.
And it was such a profound tweet.
Yeah, it was. It was just date stamp.
Let's go to the chat room.
I've got a question from the chat. It's almost a polar opposite question of yours. Because of how involved your audience is, do you believe you've got the power to steer the direction of the future of space and travel into it and the media?
So the question is, because of social media, you get a lot of people and you kind of get thrown up on a little bit of a pedestal. Do you think you can use that pedestal to steer people? And actually, I think it's quite the opposite. I think that people end up steering us, and we are their subjects, not the other way around, at least in our situation. So I would say, no, not really. The only thing that we hopefully have control over is getting them more excited about space travel and getting that, I think, I don't know, as a kid, I was really kind of a space geek, and I was all excited about rockets, and then something in me died for a long time. And I don't know what that is, and I can't tell you what that moment was, but I guess maybe it was when I realized I couldn't go to space. And now that I'm going to be able to, I think lighting that fire in people again is important, and I think that hopefully the only thing we can do is light that fire in people, and from there they control it. Hopefully that wasn't too cheesy.
That brings up sort of a related question is, how can advocacy organizations like the National Space Society, like the Planetary Society, Space Frontier Foundation, and so on, leverage social media tools, new media tools for an advocacy mission to get people to go out and write Congress to demand more funding or to reform ITAR or whatever the case may be? It's not clear to me that all of these organizations really are taking full advantage of the potential of these tools to reach out to both their members and to broader audiences, specifically people who are interested in space who may not necessarily be a member of these, but are tied in to these social media networks that could be properly motivated. help drive the discussion in a particular direction.
Yeah, the original question was, can we, any of us, use this large group of followers or friends or subscribers or whatever we want to call them to affect change down the road? And I think at the X Prize Foundation, that is absolutely 100% true. And in fact, we are critically reliant upon that. If you think about it, and I hope Mike will chime in and correct me if I'm wrong, we offer our teams a couple things. One is a big prize purse, and that's really nice and that's helpful for them. But I think probably at least as helpful, maybe more helpful, is the attention that we bring them from the general public, from potential donors, from potential investors, and certainly from potential corporate sponsors. When you are out there and you are, whether you're a passive consumer of our message through any of these social media channels, or even better, if you are going out and furthering the cause by retweeting or linking things or engaging in discussions, you are absolutely helping me raise money to offer more prizes. You are absolutely helping Mike attract more sponsors to sponsor Team Maston in their effort to win one of our prizes. It has a real, I think people don't understand the ability to which they have the impact to change the course of where this industry is going to go. It's probably not a totally binary thing where the industry is doomed without that, but it certainly does help. And at the same level, and maybe this is getting into another question, but we've just gone through a 6-month period where the attention that space has been paid in Media 1.0 has just gone down the tubes, and we've seen brilliant journalists like Miles O'Brien and many others getting canned, not for lack of ability, because I assure you Miles O'Brien is fantastically talented, because the editors aren't getting the feedback to know that people care about that. They're getting the feedback to know that people care about what Britney Spears wore today, not the feedback to care about was there a rocket test in Mojave or not.
But going back to Ian's question, I think Miles getting laid off from CNN is the best career move he ever had.
Yeah, and maybe if I can ask a question, I'd love to ask those of you who are far better at this than I am, how can we turn that into a real opportunity? How can we take this influx of talent or outflux of talent from Media 1.0? I think Miles has already done it himself. He's done a great job. But he wasn't the only one to lose his position in the last couple of months. How do we get them repurposed? How do we get them engaged and active in a whole new way to a whole new audience?
Can I add something to that question? I think just to make it a bit more challenging, I want to challenge you guys, how do you monetize this? How does, that's a question. I've actually had this conversation with several traditional journalists that no longer have full-time jobs, and that's the question. I love what I'm doing. How do I monetize it? There might not be an answer, because
Well, as somebody who's been working on a startup for the last year, and before that, it is one of the toughest things. But one of the things we truly believe, that if we stay true to the content and we continue, it was yesterday in one of the presentations, they were talking about, I think it was X-Core. They said, when is it going to be ready to fly? When it's ready to fly. And I think because of some of the things we're doing are so innovative and it's so on the edge that sponsors look at it and, it's a hard sell. And I mean, we were very familiar with that at the X Prize, the X Prize Cup. In 2006, we were taking the X Prize Cup out and trying to sell this, this space event. Our sponsors were like, we went to Yahoo and they said, wait, you're gonna have a lunar lander challenge and nobody's gonna be flying in it? We don't want to cover that. So sponsorship is hard. Getting people engaged is hard. But I do believe that if you stay true to proof of what you want to do and create it, and then watch your analytics, you can build an audience, and in the end, you can build advertising. I think that what you're seeing is as traditional media, and people like Miles O'Brien go off to other things, I think they're going to take their skills, especially Miles. I think he'll be able to take his skills and export them to other sites who are going to be able to take advantage. Because the one thing we know, it may not work on traditional news, traditional sources, but space does work online. Hubble Space Telescope mission was one of the most popular videos we did over the last few weeks. People want the information. It's just a completely different audience. Well, that reminds me of a funny joke about network news, but if anybody wants to hear it, I'll tell it afterwards.
Well, even before Ian said it, I think one of the big questions is monetizing this. Is how do you find ways to give new careers to these people who have been lost in the traditional media world. And that's a particular challenge because space is particularly, if you're looking at a lot of the traditional revenue models of advertising, space is considered a very narrow niche. And there are a very limited number of companies that would consider themselves interested in advertising in a space-related new media publication because there's so few of them that advertise in space-related old media publications. If you open up Aviation Week or Space News, and you look, it's a traditional set of big aerospace advertisers. So the challenge is finding the right revenue model, which might be a mixture of advertising and subscriptions and sponsorships and so on, and trying to find that right balance, which is proven extremely difficult throughout the media sphere, not just in space, but throughout the whole media landscape, in such a way that you can be able to leverage a lot of the talent that is unfortunately becoming available because these people are getting laid off from mainstream media publications.
I think you had a question.
I was just thinking, people that figured out how to monetize the park benches and the bottom of security trays at airports and a lot of other bizarre places in a bizarre way, not all through advertising. I was thinking, is there a Web 2.0 product placement campaign that can go on?
So I'm gonna tell part of this joke. I can't tell the full joke, but I'll tell half of it.
Yeah, you have to tell the joke now.
Well, let me break it down into two.
And it better be funny.
Two levels in kind of the sponsorship thing, because I've been dealing with this for a very long time. So I was at AOL Time Warner, and we were covering Return to Flight at the Kennedy Space Center in 2005. And we were trying to sell Return to Flight, a very, very important mission for NASA, get the shuttle operational again. And we were desperately trying to find sponsors that would fit our audience for this mission. And so I'll never forget, we're doing our live remote from Kennedy, and I'm watching the stream online, and we went to a Procter & Gamble commercial, and this was, I don't know if you all remember, but one of the first, on the launch schedule, the first flight was delayed. But right before the delay, a Procter & Gamble commercial came up, and it was a jingle, gotta go right now. So a lot of your traditional advertisers don't work. The other thing about network news is fueled by two types of advertising. Advertising that helps you go to the bathroom, and advertising that prevents you from going to the bathroom.
Monetize. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
There are a lot of people in this country whose jobs do not allow them to be constantly referring to a computer or a telephone or something, which means they're always on delay. Which, if any of these new media are most useful for communicating with that kind of customer, audience, whatever?
It depends. If you can be succinct, then Twitter is still fine. You don't have to be on Twitter 30,000 times a day. In fact, if you are, somebody's going to not follow you. But like once a day, twice a day, well, I still love you, is fine. You go to the bathroom, right? You bring your phone with you. And I know that kind of sounds bad, but
Just don't answer it.
Right. But you can Twitter while you're in the bath. Well, fake it. I gotta blow my nose. Sorry, I'll be gone for 2 minutes. They're gonna allow you to do that. You can tweet while you're at lunch. And the other really nice thing because Twitter's become so popular, thank you, Ashton Kutcher. You can also, there's a lot of other companies that have, kind of like we were saying, like Twitterific and TweetDeck, and then there's one called TwitPic. You can take a really quick picture of something, and it doesn't even matter if it's crappy and grainy and dark and nobody even knows what it is. In fact, you could probably lie, but you can say, that's such and such. That's our new whatever. That's the guy who said such and such. And people are still interested in that. So it's to a certain extent, it's making the time, but at the same time, it's not like it has to take a lot of time to do this. Does that?
I was thinking from the other end, who has time to follow Twitter?
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges
Or
of
is there something else that would be
your, sorry, specifically with Twitter, it will all go to your Twitter account on the computer. And so I do that during the day. When I get home, I go, okay, what did I miss the last 3 hours? And I can just shuffle through and figure out, oh, Pomerantz was funny today. That kind of thing.
No, that probably didn't happen. It's a balancing act, right? I mean, we're all competing for eyeballs and time. So is it going to be an hour of television, or is it going to be an hour of Twitter, or is it going to be an hour of whatever? I mean, that's just what it comes down to.
It's increasingly, no, television is not one of those things.
No, I agree. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the challenges of always on, is that we're not, as humans, we're not always on. We do have to sleep, and some of us don't take our phones into the bathroom. Yeah, hold it very carefully, by the way, when you're in there. But, a good blog post can be timeless. A good blog post, it has value that has a half-life that's not measured in seconds. Same way with a good video. I mean, there's lots of media options out there that don't lose their effectiveness over the course of minutes or hours. Even tweets. Just because that there is a factor of immediacy involved and that there's the ability to communicate instantly doesn't always mean that that there's a correspondingly short lifetime to the information. Sometimes there is, but sometimes it can be much more effective. And I'm writing from the perspective of someone who heads a publication that puts out articles once a week, so which is a lifetime in the Twitterverse. But that there is if you put some thought into it, put some contemplation into it, you can be very effective and not have to worry about you're missing the whole world because you have to work 8 hours a day and you can't be on Twitter or on Facebook during that time.
If I were to recommend one specific tool to someone who's in that situation where, for whatever reason, they don't have connectivity very often and it's once per day or only on the weekends, it would definitely, without question, be get an RSS reader. There's RSS, remote syndication system. Really simple syndication. There you go. So basically what it is you can sign up for, the one I use is called Google Reader, but there's a million of them. Of course I use the Google product. But what it is it's a way where I can subscribe to, usually people use them to subscribe to blogs, but you can actually use them to subscribe to a wide number of things, including people's Twitter streams, including a search for people who are saying your brand name in Twitter, things like that. You can go at the end of the day, however often you want. They'll all be listed in chronological order. You can read them, you can skim them, you can flag them to read later, and it is a great way. That's certainly, like, if I think about, I'm usually quite connected, but sometimes I'm on an airplane or I'm on vacation or I just don't feel like it and I'm not checking, and I can go through at the end of the day and very quickly read, okay, Jeff posted these things, and Mike posted these things, and Spacevidcast, okay, here it's in my stream, and I can watch what I have time to watch and skip the rest or save them for later.
I think another thing to add to that is that Twitter's not just for following people. You can follow subjects, using hashtags, and that's just putting the number sign next to any word.
Yep.
I mean, we've got a hashtag for this event. You can throw it in your Twitter right now. It's just #ISDC, and you can see every single Twitter post that somebody's mentioned, or just do a search for ISDC. So if you're looking for something on a specific subject, you can actually look for community feedback that way as well. Yeah, let's go to the chat room real quick. Just one from the chat room. We've been ignoring them, and they get testy.
Slightly different kind of media, science fiction. Do you think it's really useful for creating enthusiasm about space? Or is it doing more harm than good by creating such unrealistic expectations? And what are you all doing to try and make it more realistic and more open to everyone? Should we take this question?
Repeat that. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. Oh.
Wait.
Sorry about that. Slightly different kind of media, science fiction. Do you believe it's useful in creating more enthusiasm for space and related technologies, or is it doing more harm than good in creating unrealistic expectations?
This is that blog post that you
And what are you all doing to make it
That was me, I swear I did not just ask that question.
What's your answer?
I wasn't sure, I wanted to,
And the panel goes this way.
yes, the panel's moving this way.
Social media, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm Bryce Russ. I do some work for yours and a few other groups. I wrote a blog post for the Launchpad, the Google Lunar X Prize blog, basically asking the exact same question that Brian just read from everyone in the chat room, asking, is science fiction good because it inspires people to, follow space, have dreams of, being on the Enterprise or something, or does it give them unreal expectations? Am I cutting? Can you hear me okay?
You're good.
Okay, I know I'm too loud. Okay, anyway. And what my answer is, I came into it thinking, of course, people want to know more about space, of course people would be interested in science fiction. Science fiction is a good thing because, it makes people think about space. Anything that makes people think about space is a good thing. But then when I was doing some researching for it, I did, come across some Buzz Aldrin's comments on this subject. He is more of the perspective that it's, more of a negative thing. It gives people unrealistic expectations, that sort of thing. And I just realized it may be more of an issue, or it may be, more unclear than I previously thought. So that's something I'm still trying to decide what I think about that. And I've been reading a lot of the comments on the blog, and I saw your post on that you put up a while ago, and it's really good commentary, and it's something that I'm hopefully going to figure out more after, I get out of the ISDC and get some sleep. I've been volunteering, running around crazy all week long, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, back to our panel.
Does anybody on the panel want to respond to that as well, or should we move on?
Social, making it interactive, that's pretty cool.
Viral panel.
I do have I do have a really quick comment on that, and I think it's both. Time and time again, people will come into the chat room, whether we're doing a launch event or we're doing this or whatever, and people will be like, oh, is this live? What's this? What's going on? And even like the stuff that we take for granted, like a launch event, we're sitting there staring at Endeavour. It's on the pad. It looks like an orbiter. It's got the stuff there. It's all of that stuff. People are like, what's this? What's going on? And so I don't want to say that the audience in general is uneducated by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there's a balance between the realistic, the stuff that's really going on, the Google Lunar X Prize, the Northrop Grumman Lunar Lander Challenge, and just the simple. What am I trying to say? Like the education that this kind of stuff is out there, I guess. There's a balance between the two. And I think for some people, just getting them out to the Star Trek movie, because Zachary Quinto's in it, and I really liked him on Heroes, is just as good to me as somebody coming into the chat room and going, what's that big orange thing sitting there? Well, okay, that's, the tank and the thing and the stuff, and yes, that's a bat on the outside. All of that stuff. I think it's both. They speak to slightly different audiences, and yes, there's a crossover, but yes.
Just want to offer one quick data point. I think it's probably quite reasonable to say that if Robert Heinlein had never written The Man Who Sold the Moon, there would be no Google Lunar X Prize. Yeah. And if Arthur C. Clarke had never picked up a pen and paper or a typewriter, goodness only knows how many things in our industry wouldn't be around. So it can be a force for extreme good. I agree it can probably also be quite a distraction, but if well written and well done, I think it can be a very powerful tool.
So it's interesting going back to the 2006 X Prize Cup. One of the things when we had these large-scale rockets launching, we didn't want them to go fast. We needed them to be slow and lumbering. Because if it's slow and lumbering, you get that nice, graceful shot. If it's fast, it's gone in 2 seconds, and you can only really see it on the slow-mo. So, the thing about space is, real space, it's either too fast or too slow, too remote, and what science fiction can do is compress it and be able to sell it in a way that is bite-sized and people understand it. It's up to us to make it interesting. It's up to us to show that Hubble spacewalk how absolutely cool it is. These people are up hundreds of miles over the Earth and they're performing this work. And it's just, the thing about space, it is hard to compress in a way to get it in front of everybody. You can compress it very easily in a 2-hour science fiction movie. And in fact, it reminds me of a very funny tweet from Peter Diamandis. I'm not sure the answer to this question, but at least for Peter, he was off to see Star Trek for the second time.
Question back, oh, sorry.
Yeah, actually, well, I do want to actually respond to that a little bit, because I did actually follow up on the blog post that I think some of this is generated by. When I originally got involved in this industry back in 2002 and through 2004, one of the reasons I got involved was because I saw a big lack of business experience and focus on business in the industry. The first ISDC I went to, there was an entire panel on why my moon base is shinier than your moon base. No discussion about how to actually pay for the thing. And I actually do think that's actually one of the faults of science fiction. No science fiction book that I know of, except for maybe a couple of times, Heinlein or whatever, talks about the business side, the economics of science fiction. How do these things get built? You know, and in a lot of cases, I think a lot of science fiction authors, Star Trek is one of the things that bugged me about the movie was how everything was so militaristic. It falls back on the government's just going to do it. The government's going to build these big spaceships in Battlestar Galactica. Government's going to build these big spaceships that Captain Kirk flies around in. That's not realistic. So I don't think it sets unrealistic expectations about the ability to just build a spaceship and go. I think it does build unrealistic expectations about economics that I think is severely lacking in education and in space these days. So, I'm sorry, I'm going to turn it back to some questions from the audience.
Did you still have a question in the room? Didn't you shorten it?
Yeah.
There was a big chat about this.
The hashtag is ISDC 2009.
If you hit search.twitter.com, you can search for either, and it'll just pop up.
And then I think someone in the back had a question.
Yeah, Loretta, you had something to
I just wanted to respond, and that's an issue that's really important to me about science fiction.
I agree with what Will was saying. I think that the artists are the designers of the future. And I think without them, we wouldn't have that future. Like you pointed out, it's pretty stark in our life. We get to live it, the sci-fi dream. But we wouldn't if the artists hadn't blazed the trail for us. And one of the things that I really do when I work with undergraduates is I have them get in touch with what their passion is, what sparked them, what their dream is, what their completely crazy idea is, what they would tell their professors and their professors would tell them is impossible. And I say, good, go do that. And maybe they don't have an appreciation for the economics or the business side of it. I'm sure they're engineers. But it's those engineers who wanted a communicator. It's those engineers who want to, go faster than the speed of light, who are going to get us out there. And I think it's worth the frustration and angst I have of someone in the public who thinks the shuttle can go to the moon or something. It's worth that price to have that dream and the engineers building what the artists are designing.
All right, we're getting towards the end here, and I want to. Oh, does someone have a comment?
I wanted to respond to that real quickly. Because I do agree. I get in this discussion. Stephen Fleming, who is an investor in several space startup companies, been with XCOR for a long time, and I go to DragonCon every now and then and actually do a talk on space and what's actually going on, what actual materials being built. We're flying stuff. This stuff is real. And we never get more than 4 people in the room. We ask people why they do that, and they're like, it's fantasy for me. I just want to watch it on TV. I want to dress up like a Klingon. I don't actually want to go get in this rocket ship myself. And Stephen and our jaws just fall on the floor because, and this is the point that I agree with you on, is when I read science fiction as a kid, it wasn't fiction. It was, this is the life plan I'm going to follow. If I don't become the main character in this thing, my life has no point. And you're chuckling because I bet you have the same
thoughts when you were reading the science fiction as a kid. This is not fiction. This is, okay, this is how I go about doing it. It's a plan. That's something that's unique to us. And I think it's something that drives us, that it inspires, but there's a difference, I think, that the inspiration is to turn it into reality, not to just treat it as a fantasy. And that's one of the differences I see out there sometimes.
All right, one last question. Oh, maybe two, we'll see.
Because I started reading science fiction in 1948, and at the time it was the Burroughs type of stuff. But I had big brothers, so by 1950, I was reading science fiction. The tramp in those days actually, with Heinlein and Clark, tried to conform to the science. If they waved their hands, they sort of let you know that everything else in it was not ambiguous. Modern science fiction doesn't do very much of that. And I think it's not as good for getting people into the career path. It makes people think that science is easy and that they try a little and they find it's hard. I think, and a lot of what you find on the science fiction shelf right now doesn't even pretend to be science fiction, it's all fiction. So it depends on which science fiction we're talking about.
Sure. Sorry to rush you on here. Let's get to a point. Okay. I think we're getting towards the end here. We can do one more? All right. Mike Mealing says we can do one more, so we can do one more. And raise your hands if you're blogging or Twittering or Facebooking right now. Well, no, my phone's off, so I cheat. Yeah. Or if you did it before you came here, about coming here. Awesome.
I made Twitter, Facebook posts about this session.
Yeah.
To make sure people knew about it.
We're streaming it live on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Audio, video, with real-time chat rooms.
All right, I think that we're getting towards the end here. I want to ask you guys in the audience to do me a favor. Everybody who was here when this panel started, raise your hands. Okay, now put them down. Everybody who was not here when this panel started, raise your hands. All right. At the beginning, I did a social experiment. A lot of the times you walk around here and you see the doors are closed to sessions. This is not what we're doing here. The great thing about social media is there's three things. Talk about what you care about. Keep talking about it. Keep all of your doors open. I promise you, your audience will grow. And keep that in mind as you're going through this, and just keep an open mind and keep talking and have fun with it. Anybody else want to say anything?
That was awesome.
Thank you. Thanks very much to everyone in the audience and to our great panelists.